Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 320. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a good summer so far. Today we're going to get back into talking about political violence. We had a little bit more political violence over the weekend. All through last week, there was violence and riots, sweeping the country. And I want to get back into talking about political violence today. I have a lot to share with you guys. I don't want to waste any time to get right into this. And I want to state that political violence is not something new in the United States. There's been tons of political violence in the history of the United States. One of the most interesting incidents of political violence that came to mind when I was preparing for this podcast was the caning of Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner was a senator. He was a Republican. He was against slavery. He was an abolitionist, and he had given a speech in the Senate there in the Senate chamber in Washington, D.C. in 1865. This is leading up to the Civil War. And if you don't know what happened with the caning of Charles Sumner, I have this short clip that explains a little bit about the political violence that took place leading up to the Civil War, which the Civil War was very violent as well. Very violent times. The point I'm trying to make is that political violence in the United States is not something new. Take a listen to this clip about what happened to Charles Sumner in 1865.
In 1856, the U.S. Senate experienced...
1856, not 65. 65 would have been after the Civil War. Civil War started in 60. And anyway, so this is leading up to the Civil War.
...experienced a shocking act of violence that underscored the deep divisions in American society. Charles Sumner, a vocal abolitionist, delivered a fiery speech against slavery and its proponents. His words targeted Senator Andrew P. Butler, who was not present. Subsequently, Butler's cousin, Congressman Preston Brooks, sought revenge. In retaliation, Brooks entered the Senate chamber and violently beat Sumner with a cane, leaving him severely injured. This brutal attack symbolized the escalating tensions between pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions, foreshadowing the impending conflicts that would soon engulf the nation.
All right, so 1856 is when this happened. Southern Democrat, after Sumner gives his speech, he walks down to the Senate well, and he proceeds to beat the hell out of this man to a bloody pulp, and nearly taking his life in the Senate chamber, in the Senate well. Beat the hell out of them. And then the Civil War happens again. Abraham Lincoln is assassinated. That's political violence. And then we have strings of political violence. We have, even John F. Kennedy is political violence. Him getting shot in the face. John F. Kennedy's brother getting shot. Robert Kennedy. The assassination of Martin Luther King. There was tons of political violence throughout the 60s. And then after, in the 1970s, you start seeing a political violence kind of tamper down in that decade because there was a lot of political violence in the 60s. And it all came to a head in 1968. But in the decade of the 70s, political violence, started to cool off. You don't see a lot. And then I started thinking about this in the 80s. What political violence did we have in the United States in the 80s? There was the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. Shortly after he's inaugurated, there's an assassination attempt on him. I was able to think of the Oklahoma City bombing in the 90s. Not a lot of political violence. And then in 2016, when Donald Trump starts to run for office, you see this major tick up in political violence in that campaign. We talked about it a few podcasts ago. This is again a report about the rally that Donald Trump had in San Jose. I like to focus on San Jose because it's just a great example of what went on all over the country. Everywhere that Donald Trump went to campaign, he was met with violence from the left. And I think that's very interesting that too, that the Southern Democrat that beats the hell out of Republican Charles Sumner in the Senate in 1856 is also a Democrat. So just something going on here with Democrats. But everywhere that Donald Trump went in 2016 to campaign, he was met with violence like this. This again is San Jose.
None of that breaking news overnight, those violent clashes at Donald Trump's rally in California. You see those protesters there, they attack Trump supporters.
The supporters are beaten as they leave the campaign event. There were mobs out waiting for his supporters. They beat the hell out of them. They attacked them, brutalized them. The San Jose police, the city's run by Democrats. The mayor is a Democrat. They don't do anything to help Trump supporters. They don't do anything to stop the violence. And this went on everywhere that Trump went, particularly here in California, but it went on in Arizona. It went on in Mexico. Everywhere he went, he was met with mob violence. Something you got to understand as we're talking about political violence. There's two types of political violence that I want to focus on. I think I've done this podcast before, but we're going to talk about these two different types of political violence that you got to understand and distinguish between mob violence. This is the mob mentality going on at all of Trump's rallies. It's not a single lone individual who may be suffering from mental illness, may be motivated by a number of issues that will motivate a lone individual, a lone wolf, like what we saw over the weekend, go out and commit political violence. That's political violence as well. The lone individual that goes out who's motivated by politics to commit violence, the guy who shot Steve Scalise, the guy who shot Gabby Gifford, this guy over the weekend, motivated by political violence, but a lone individual nut job is different from mob violence. We're focusing on right now and what Trump and his supporters were faced with in 2016 when we started to see this tick up in political violence was mob violence. Okay, so
Trump spoke.
San Jose.
Tom Yamas was there. He's on the scene now in San Jose. Good morning, Tom.
George, this was one of the most violent scenes I have ever witnessed at a
violent scenes.
At times, it seemed like the police had no control of the situation. People were getting beat up right in front of them, and these were not clashes.
Getting beat up right in front of the police. This is what ABC News is reporting. That right in front of the police, where the Democratic mayor and the Democratic city, the Democrats run the entire city, were allowing, right in front of the police, they were allowing Trump supporters to get the hell beat out of them as they left a political event. They went to an event to hear a political candidate campaign for office, and as they left that campaign event, they were beaten by the violent left, and the Democrats. The Democrat mayor allowed it to happen. The police there allowed it to happen. Happened right in front of them. They didn't say anything. None of the Democrat politicians said anything and said that no, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't be doing this at Trump's events. In 2016, when he was running against Hillary Clinton, none of them came out and said no, don't do this. This is not a good example of who we are. We shouldn't be doing this. They allowed it to happen and in many cases encouraged it to happen. And like this guy says here, the the Trump supporters that went to this rally in San Jose were getting the hell beat out of them in front of the police.
I have ever witnessed at a Trump rally. At times, it seemed like the police had no control of the situation. People were getting beat up right in front of them. And these were not clashes. These were pure attacks. Trump supporters, men, women, even the elderly, left this building last night and walked right into danger. Overnight, all-out brawls outside the Trump rally in San Jose, California. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters.
They were like spitting on me and stuff.
This man says he was sucker punched, his clothes torn off his back.
7 more people just come in, start punching me.
So this mob violence and this is what happened in San Jose. This is a little bit more of San Jose. I gotta show you the woman that they corner in front of this hotel, and just like, it's just insane what they do to this woman. Egg her, berate her. This is her right here. This is San Jose. Egg all over her hair and face. They were blocking anyone from getting into the hotel, but the violence on her was so intense that they finally let her into the hotel. And this is all happened in San Jose. Again, no Democrats. Mexican flags here, Mexican flags again, because Trump wants to build a wall, because he is campaigning on building a wall. And like I was explaining in the last podcast, that the guy was, also campaigning that he was going to try to figure out a way to legalize the 11 million illegals that were in the country and make DACA a permanent, but he wanted to build the wall just so we're not dealing with the problem of 11 million, 30 million more illegals again down the road when some Democrat like Joe Biden comes in and decides they just want to open the floodgates again. They wanted to build something permanent there, so the next time another Joe Biden comes in, that they can't just open the floodgates for 3 years and let everybody and their mama in. So this was San Jose, but it wasn't only San Jose. Like I said, this violence was everywhere that Trump went in 2016. This was, I think this was in Costa Mesa, Orange County.
Trump rally in California was the target overnight of some of the worst political violence of the presidential campaign.
This is Costa Mesa.
One of hundreds of protesters stomped on a police car in Orange County, southeast of Los Angeles.
The late night disturbances.
This is all over California, that political violence in 2016. No Democrats said anything. No Democrats. Hillary Clinton, who was the Democratic nominee that year, she never came out and says we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be having violence at Trump campaign events. Nancy Pelosi, who was Speaker of the House, or the majority leader at a minimum, she was the majority leader at that time, because Democrats lost both controls of both houses in 2014. So she was the majority leader, but she didn't say anything about this violence. Chuck Schumer didn't say anything. None of the Democrats said anything about this violence. This was San Diego. San Diego was one of the few places in California where they did push back against the violence, but there was tons of violence, and had a huge force here in San Diego. So everywhere, there wasn't that much violence in San Diego, a little bit, because like I said, they had, San Diego was one of the last campaign events that Trump did in California that year. And they had already seen what had happened in Costa Mesa and San Jose and these other places. So, and at that time, I forget who the mayor was in San Diego at that time, but I remember the police chief saying that there was going to be no violence, and she put this huge force out. And it just goes to show, I mean, what could have happened in San Jose? What could have happened in Costa Mesa if they wanted to confront this violence? But it was huge, mob violence everywhere that they went. This again was Chicago that year. So it wasn't just happening in southern, western border states. This was Chicago as well.
First, our top story this morning, anger surrounding Donald Trump's presidential campaign reaches a boiling point in Chicago. Last night, the Republican frontrunner canceled a campaign rally over security concerns when thousands of protesters gathered outside an arena at the University of Illinois and then flooded the venue where he was scheduled to speak.
Trump's campaign.
So they took over the venue and there was tons of mob violence that is motivated by politics. This is political violence and it's from the left and it's over and over again starting in 2016. You saw the tick up in 2016, but it wasn't just in 2016. Trump ends up winning that election again. And this was what happened on the day that he was inaugurated. It wasn't a peaceful transfer of power from Obama to Trump. It was a very violent transfer of power, political violence on the day Donald Trump was inaugurated. Take a listen.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks. Facing off with thousands of officers on site, many in riot gear, confronting them with flashbang grenades and pepper spray. All of a sudden, the police officers started to spray pepper spray, and they got our audio technician. They're coming. See us running because they're going to throw more flashbangs. The chaotic scene just blocks outside the secure area of the inauguration and parade route.
I personally have anti-establishment slants, but I don't think that this is anything that I want to be a part of.
This checkpoint is closed!
Before the swearing-in ceremony even began, protesters tried to block checkpoint entrances.
This is all from the left wing.
During President Trump's speech, several demonstrators were escorted out of the area. Several officers injured during the protest today, and more than 100 people arrested.
100 people arrested, several officers injured. This is before January 6th. This is after months of violence at Trump campaign events, and officers are injured, people are arrested. Very violent transfer of power on the day Donald Trump was inaugurated.
More than 100 people arrested. Once the inaugural parade began, the newly sworn-in president facing thousands of peaceful protesters amongst his supporters. NBC's Stephanie Gosk was with him all day.
When Donald Trump took the oath of office, the people here sang, "We shall overcome."
Resist from day one!
Similar demonstrations across the country. Arrest outside Trump Tower, New York City.
So that wasn't only there in D.C. on the day he was inaugurated. There were these protests, violence all across the country, not only there in D.C.
The people here sang, "We shall overcome."
Resist from day one!
Similar demonstrations across the country. Arrest outside Trump Tower, New York City. A human chain across San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. From Phoenix to Houston to Chicago, people protesting the country's new president on his first day in office.
First day. He hadn't even done anything. He hadn't even implemented any policy at all. First day, and you have all this violence and leading up to him winning that election. Probably the reason that he won the election because of all of this left-wing violence. Everywhere that he went to campaign, violence from the left. And you know, violence on the day that he's sworn in. And these people are deranged.
Tonight, thousands of protesters remain in downtown D.C., occasionally facing off with police. We have seen many people injured, both protesters and police officers.
So we've seen many people injured, protesters and police officers. Many police officers injured in these violent protests. Okay, that's interesting. And then again, we had the Black Lives Matter Summer of Love after George Floyd, dies in custody after resisting arrest with fentanyl in his system. This swept the nation. Again, violence from the left. These are images from nationwide from the Summer of Love 2020. Political violence, mob violence. Looting, vandalism.
We will get justice!
just useful idiots. These people are useful idiots in the true sense of the word. We will get justice. Justice for what? I mean, what's wrong with you? I mean, just complete useful idiots. You're being used. That's what you people are doing in the streets with the violence and with the vandalism. You're being used in this color revolution to topple the Trump administration in 2020. That's what they were using this for. And the same people are using the immigration issue now as a means to a Marxist revolution to topple the Trump administration. And the peaceful protests give cover for the violent protests. The peaceful protesters and the peaceful protest is necessary for the violent protests. That's why you see people. You can read here at the bottom here. It says right here, peaceful George Floyd protests marred by bursts of violence. Where if there's bursts of violence, it's not peaceful. It's either one or the other. It can either be violent or it can be peaceful, but it's not peaceful and violent. But the peaceful protests give cover for the violence. They work together. So you have the peaceful protesters here, and we're just on our knees. We're all peaceful, and we're going to wait till the sun goes down, and then we're going to get some new tennis shoes. That was all the violence, political violence, and the useful idiots being used all over the summer of 2020. What did Democrats say when this was going on? Nothing. Schumer and Pelosi, they put on the kente cloths, the African cloths, and they marched out, and they used the violence. They were using it. That's what I'm telling you. It was color revolution. They didn't tell them to stop. Nancy Pelosi, she gave this speech because they were tearing down all these statues. And she's originally from Baltimore. Her father was the mayor of Baltimore. And there's this Italian community in Baltimore where they have a statue of Christopher Columbus. And Christopher Columbus is Italian. And he's celebrated by Italians. And they're in the community where she grew up, where her father was mayor in that Italian community. The Black Lives Matter protesters tear down the statue of Christopher Columbus. She's asked about it in a press conference, and she says, people are going to do what they do. I don't care about statues, is what she said. None of them said, stop the violence. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing violence. We shouldn't be protesting and attacking Trump's supporters when he's campaigning. We shouldn't be setting cars on fire. We shouldn't be doing the violence during Black Lives Matter. No, they put on the kente cloths, the African cloths, and they went out there and grandstand, and they told him to keep it up. Keep it up. They kneeled. They kneeled for George Floyd with the kente cloths. Look at Barbara Lee. Look at her. Looking at the camera. But yeah, this is what they did. They didn't tell him to stop. They encouraged it. They were using it. So now we have more political violence over the weekend. We had a bunch of political violence all last week. The vandalism, looting, and violence in Los Angeles. Then it spread out to other major cities, to Seattle, to Atlanta, to Austin, to Dallas. I think they were out in Phoenix, in Colorado over the weekend. And then Portland kicked off, and they started doing what they do up in Portland. They take it to another level up in Portland and Seattle. Everybody else is just amateurs compared to what they do up in Portland and Seattle. And then, they were attacking federal buildings in Portland over the weekend, and just violence. But this incident of violence happened where 2 or 4 lawmakers were shot in Minneapolis or Minnesota. I'm not sure if it was in Minneapolis, but in Minnesota. 4 lawmakers were shot. 2 of them were killed, and that happened over the weekend. Actually, I think it happened either Friday night or Saturday morning as everyone was gearing up for the No Kings protest But take a listen to this report.
Thanks for joining us tonight on Fox 9 and Fox Local. I'm Karen Scullen. The search intensifying for the man on your screen there, 57-year-old Vance.
He was at, she says the search intensified because he was at large for a long period of time before they had arrested him. And they actually finally arrested him last night. But I think he was on the run. He wasn't even on the run. They ended up arresting him close to his house. Like in his neighborhood or something like that. He never even left his house. But he was arrested last night, but he hadn't been arrested when this report.
He's accused of assassinating State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and shooting State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. The FBI offering $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction of Belter. Former Speaker of the House of Representatives Hortman and her husband Mark killed in that shooting at her Brooklyn Park home. Senator John Hoffman and his wife were the other victims at their Champlin home.
So this guy did write a manifesto. Is what I've seen reported, but they're not releasing the manifesto. He was arrested alive and he's going to be tried for murder. So I'm assuming that the manifesto is going to be part of the evidence that they use against him. But what motivated this guy? We don't really know what motivated this guy, and everybody's coming out and they want to, attribute a motive to him and say that he was motivated by abortion or that he was motivated by, so the people on the left say that he's a right-wing guy and that he's a Republican and they're hungry. They're hungry for left-wing or for right-wing violence right now. The left are, because we've had so much left-wing violence and there's been multiple incidents of left-wing violence, mob violence, and this lone wolf violence, both the mob violence and the lone wolf violence. We've seen tons of that from the left. And they want to make it that it's both sides, that this is an issue for both sides, this political violence. We have political violence from the right and the political violence from the left. January 6th was mob violence. It wasn't a lone wolf. That was mob violence, but it was a isolated incident there at the Capitol. A one-time event. There's no other parallels that you can draw from January 6th of any other incident like that happening. And that was an isolated incident at the Capitol. It was violent, yes, and it was mob violence, and it was political violence, yes. So January 6th, that's all they have. But that was 5 years ago. And the thread is off those tires. The January 6th tires are bald. Those are some bald tires. Hey, they have no thread on those tires, those January 6th tires anymore. You get no more ground with January 6th. I mean, it doesn't have any influence politically to tug on people's heartstrings and say, oh, look at this right-wing mob violence that it's on both sides. This right-wing mob violence is just like all of the left-wing mob violence that sweeps the country. The left-wing mob violence, it doesn't just stay in Minneapolis and stay at this epicenter where George Floyd dies in custody after resisting arrest with fentanyl in his system. It doesn't just stay there. It spreads from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., to LA, to Chicago, nationwide. It's not an isolated incident. It spreads nationwide. It's a trend. It's something that becomes, I mean, if you look at all of the mob violence going back to Trump's campaign events in 2016, and then even up into today and this previous weekend and last week, what's been going on in these riots against ICE, then, I mean, it's all consistent. It's the same type of mob violence, political violence. And it's been happening since 2016 up until this past weekend. But you only have this one event, January 6th, that you have to reach back to 5 years ago, and that you have to continue to bring that up as a parallel. So they're really hungry to find right-wing violence, to have something happen happen from the right wing where he can say, look, see, it's a problem on both sides. You see? So that's what they're saying about this guy in Minnesota this weekend. People on the left were looking for evidence that he's a right wing guy, that he's a Christian nationalist is what they're saying. And he's motivated by the abortion issue because these lawmakers that he killed all, I guess, were voted for abortion. I mean, if you're going to start killing Democrats that are for abortion, bro, you have your pick of the litter. And that's what they said. They said that he had a list of Democrats that he was actually going after, and they found the list. I mean, it's interesting that they end up arresting him alive and didn't take himself out. And if you had this list, you know, then why didn't you continue with the list? They found a bunch of flyers in his car that said no kings. And so the people on the right are trying and looking for clues that this guy was a left-wing guy and trying to make him out to be a left-wing guy. This is him. This was him arrested near his house last night. There's a lot of people sharing this picture right here of a man and a woman. This guy's got a T-shirt on, and that's the Black Lives Matter fist with the gun, and it says resist. And then the woman says, I think, therefore I am a Democrat. And that's a play on Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am a Democrat. So people are trying to say that this is him and his wife. It's not him and his wife. This guy came out with a post on Facebook, and this is actually the couple that a lot of Republicans and people on the right were trying to use and say this guy was a Democrat. It doesn't really matter if this guy was a Democrat or a Republican, or if he's a right-wing guy or a left-wing guy. He wrote a manifesto, and the manifesto says what his motives are. I mean, they could put that out and just go ahead and eliminate the speculation on what his political affiliation is. But because he killed lawmakers and wounded lawmakers, this is obviously political violence. We just don't know which politics are motivating this guy. And it doesn't matter because this is, again, this is a lone wolf. This is a nut job. This is just one guy who, again, we don't know what motivates him, but this is not the same as all of the mob violence, the mob political violence that you see going on from the left, the looting, the riots, the vandalism, the attacking people and in the streets for going to a political event, you know, beating the hell out of them. It's not the same thing. This lone wolf who came up with the plot to kill lawmakers. It's still political violence, and it's still very bad, but it's not the same thing as the mob violence that we've been seeing on the left, with the mob groupthink mentality going on the left that we've been seeing since 2016. So now everybody wants to know, because of the political violence over the weekend, everybody's getting serious about it. This was Kristen Welker on Meet the Press over the weekend yesterday. And I want you to listen to what she says to Pencil Neck Adam Schiff here. Take a listen.
Senator Schiff, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you.
It's wonderful to have you back on after an incredibly busy week. I again have to start with Minnesota, Senator, and I want to put this into broader context because, of course, these acts of political violence have been increasing. We recently saw the arson attack against Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. We saw that.
Who did the arson attack against Josh Shapiro? And she's saying, yeah, we've been seeing an uptick of political violence. Yes, going back to 2016, we've been seeing an uptick of political violence, Kristen Welker. 9 years later, I'm glad you finally are paying attention to all the political violence.
Schiff, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you.
It's wonderful to have you back on after an incredibly busy week. I again have to start with Minnesota, Senator, and I want to put this into broader context because, of course, these acts of political violence have been increasing. We recently saw the arson attack against Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. We saw that kidnapping plot against Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
The kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer. There was no political violence. That wasn't any violence. That was some plot that the FBI put together and then foiled before anything took place. She wasn't kidnapped. Why are you even bringing that up?
We saw the arson attack against Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. We saw that kidnapping plot against Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the 2 assassination attempts against President Trump. Senator, what role can lawmakers play in trying to end these horrific acts of political violence?
It's a great question. What role can lawmakers play? That's the question she asked. That's a very interesting question, especially posing a question like that to Adam Schiff, who was in the House of Representatives during the riots that I just shared with you while Trump was running in 2016 in his home state of California. San Jose, that's California. This happened just up the street from his district. People getting beat up from going to political events. People, Costa Mesa, right here, Costa Mesa, or this is more San Jose. Costa Mesa is, it's got to be the district bordering his district. If not, maybe 1 or 2 over, but this is in your backyard. Shifty, this is in your backyard, starting in 2016. And then you had the violence in Trump's inauguration, and then the violence all over the Summer of Love in 2020. And you were in the House of Representatives. And Kristen Welker's asking you, what can lawmakers do? What can lawmakers do? Can lawmakers do anything, Adam Schiff?
I think you're right. We have seen over the last 8 or 10 years this proliferation of political violence against members of both parties. And I think one thing that has really contributed
against members of both parties.
We have seen over the last 8 or 10 years this proliferation of political violence against members of both parties. And I think one thing that has really contributed to it is the coarsening of the political dialogue, the way that people refer to their political opponents, the ad hominem nature of the attacks, the flirtation with violence.
The political dialogue. So, and you're going to see, too, that other people are going to say this, that it's the rhetoric, that the reason that people were justified in beating the hell out of Trump supporters as they left a campaign event in San Jose is because of Trump's rhetoric. He said he was going to build a wall. And because of his rhetoric, that these left-wing lunatics are so hopped up on emotions that they don't have any control when they hear this inflammatory rhetoric. So they have to respond in violence because they don't have any control of their emotions. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? And I love the fact that he's honest about that this all kicked off about 10 years ago. That it all started kicking off, and you saw the tick up when Trump announced that he was running for president, and he's running for president in 2015 and 2016. That's when we saw the tick up. But what Kristen Welker asked you is what lawmakers can do. And you were in the House of Representatives. What lawmakers can do. If you know this started 10 years ago, what did you guys do? What did you guys say to quell this violence, this political violence, to stop it before it got out of hand? And before we're 10 years down the road and we're still dealing with it. What did you guys do in the House of Representatives? And I tell you, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. And that's why I have to keep coming back to this select committee, this commission that the Democrats in the House of Representatives, when Pencil Neck Schiff was in the House of Representatives, this phony January 6th commission that they put together to only look at this isolated incident of violence that happened on the Capitol on January 6th. Never mind all of the other violence that preceded January 6th. I mean, Schiff says that it's been 10 years of violence. The 10 years this has been going on, that there was violence tons of political violence leading up to January 6th. But and Kristen Welker again, her question, what can lawmakers do? What can lawmakers do to quell this political violence? And when they had an opportunity to have a bipartisan commission He says it's on both sides. Schiff says it's on both sides. It's ridiculous to say that it's on both sides, but even if you agree with that it's on both sides, then this, and you want to know what lawmakers can do to put a stop to this, then you need both sides involved in it. It needs to be bipartisan. And that's the type of commission that Republicans wanted, a commission that looked at all of the violence. If it's both sides, then we should be looking at all of the violence, not only the violence on January 6th. We should be looking at the violence at the Trump campaign events. We should be looking at the Black Lives Matter violence. We should be looking at the violence at Trump's inauguration and the plethora of other political violence outside of this isolated incident at the Capitol on January 6th. But Nancy Pelosi and Democrats, going back to Kristen Welker's question, what can lawmakers do? Nancy Pelosi and Democrats only wanted to do a select committee that looked at the violence on January 6th. They wanted to exclude any of the other violence, and that's why it wasn't a bipartisan commission. That's why the Republicans saw that this was going to be a political sham, that they were only going to use this commission to go after Trump, and they didn't have any intention to looking at all of the political violence and seeing a way that they can come together, Republicans and Democrats, in a bipartisan way to quell this political violence. They were not interested in that. How? A once bipartisan commission to investigate the Capitol riot fell apart. Well, it fell apart because they only wanted to look at the violence there at the Capitol and not all of the other violence, billions of dollars of vandalism and violence and looting that had taken place in the months leading up to January 6th. Because it was a sham, and they were not interested in looking at any of that violence and talking about any of that left-wing violence. Listen to this CNN report.
Yeah, clearly the Republicans had never wanted to be part of this committee.
This report, let me just say, this is the report after Republicans vote against the commission. They vote against the commission because they wanted to look at all of the political violence, and Nancy Pelosi only wanted to narrow the focus of the investigation only on January 6th. So they vote against it. The Democrats control the House of Representatives, so they end up passing it without Republicans. There were a few Republicans that voted for it. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, of course, voted for it. But they were able to pass it even though the majority of the Republican caucus voted against it. And then so the Republicans were still going to take part, even though they knew that the investigation was going to be narrowly focused on January 6th, and they knew that it was going to be a political sham, and they knew that the Democrats were going to use it to go after Trump and just to use it to tarnish Trump and not really get to any roots of the issues that, of the security breakdown and everything around January 6th. They knew all that, and they wanted to take part in it. They put Jim Jordan and another congressman on the committee that Nancy Pelosi didn't want on the commission because they knew that Jim Jordan and these other guys would actually, focus the commission on things that they didn't want to focus on. So she tells these two people that McCarthy puts on the committee that they can't be on the committee. Unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of the United States select committees. And there's been many select committees in the history of the United States. This never happened. She tells the minority party, no, you can't put those people who you want on the committee. And then Kevin McCarthy says, okay, if we're not going to, won't allow us to name the members of the committee, then we're not taking part of it at all. So the majority pulls out. And then Nancy Pelosi, she names two Republicans to the committee herself. Unprecedented. This has never, ever, ever happened in the history of the United States in select committees, which there have been many, where the majority party, when the minority party pulls out, the leader of the majority party picks two members from the minority party to serve on the committee, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who are then censored by the Republican Party. So this is this report that Manu is given here is right after Kevin McCarthy gives a speech saying that we're pulling out, we're not taking part in the commission to investigate violence, political violence.
Yeah, clearly the Republicans had never wanted to be part of this committee to begin with. They didn't want this investigation to happen. They opposed, all except for a few dozen, opposed the creation of an outside commission. Then they all, except for one, opposed the creation of a select committee.
Why did they oppose it? Why did they oppose the creation of the committee? Tell them, Manu.
Of the two, I should say, opposed the creation of a select committee. So this decision by Pelosi, in some ways, viewed by Republicans that I've spoken to as a gift of sorts. They did not want to take part in this investigation. They would have had to have confronted a lot of questions about Donald Trump's role in all of this. They wanted to shift the investigation, as you heard Kevin McCarthy right there, to focus on Nancy Pelosi, her decision making, and then the run up to what happened on January 6th, suggesting that perhaps she in some way was responsible.
Why wouldn't you investigate that? Listen to what he's saying. Oh, they wanted to look at what Nancy Pelosi did before January 6th, and did she do anything to, to prevent the Capitol Police Chief from requesting National Guard assistance, and why the fence wasn't up? Why would you investigate Nancy Pelosi? So Nancy Pelosi wanted to make sure they didn't ask any questions about her.
Pelosi, her decision making, and then the run up to what happened on January 6th, suggesting that perhaps she in some way was responsible for this.
She was responsible.
Even though Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, also would have a say in terms of the security complex. But that were the questions that Republicans wanted to push. They also wanted to look into political violence from last summer, from what happened during the racial unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement, to be part of that investigation. They did not want a narrowly focused investigation on January 6th.
So listen to what he's saying, that the Republicans pulled out. The Republicans wanted to look at all the political violence. The Republicans wanted to do a bipartisan investigation. Again, Kristen Welker, what can lawmakers do? What can lawmakers do to quell all this political violence that goes back 10 years? Adam Schiff, that goes back 10 years to 2016 is when we saw this uptick of political violence when Trump's trying to campaign for president. We've had years and years of political violence. What can lawmakers do? And the Republicans wanted to do that. The Republicans wanted to do what lawmakers could do. They wanted to have a bipartisan commission, not only looking at January 6th, but also looking at all of the left-wing political violence, all of the political violence that led up to January 6th. And that's why they did not want to take part in this commission, because they knew that Nancy Pelosi only wanted to focus the commission and the investigation on January 6th and only on Trump's role, not her role, not the role of the Capitol Police, not anyone else's role, that only January 6th and only the role of Trump. The lawmakers aren't interested in quelling political violence from the left. Kristen Welker.
Say in terms of the security complex, but that were the questions that Republicans wanted to push. They also want to look into political violence from last summer, from what happened during the racial unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement, to be part of that investigation. They did not want a narrowly focused investigation on January 6th, which is what Democrats were pursuing here. So
that's what they got. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. They wanted a sham investigation that only looked at January 6th and not any of the other political violence. All right, so this was on The View today, and the topic of political violence came up, talking about what happened over the weekend with these lawmakers being killed in Minnesota. Take a listen.
Late last night, the manhunt ended for the suspect accused of murdering State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, who were also shot and are still recovering in the hospital. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke out about this yesterday. Take a look.
This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences.
What do you mean this can't be the norm? It's been going on for 10 years almost. I mean, what are you going to do to stop it? If this is, it's becoming the norm. What do you mean it can't be the norm?
Governor Tim Walz spoke out about this yesterday. Take a look.
This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences.
Funny thing, too, is that it was this guy's state that was the epicenter of the left-wing political violence in 2020, Minnesota, where he let them burn down the cities. He let them take over the police station. So hilarious.
Now's the time for us to recommit to the core values of this country. And each and every one of us can do it. Talk to a neighbor rather than arguing. Debate an issue. Shake hands. Find common ground. It's not about hatred. It's not about mean tweets. It's not about demeaning someone. It's leading with grace and compassion and vision and compromise and decency.
God.
That was taken from us in Minnesota with the murder of Speaker Hortman.
Now, people keep saying, is this going to be a wake-up call? But when you start thinking about Paul Pelosi, you start thinking about...
Paul Pelosi again. Some lone wolf, lone nut job. They broke into Pelosi's house in San Francisco, and they're using that again as an example of, I guess, I've heard other people try to use that as an example of right-wing political violence. It's ridiculous.
Be a wake-up call. But when you start thinking about Paul Pelosi, you start thinking about all of the people, all of the folks who have been in the midst of this. What is happening?
What's happening?
It's more than just
what is happening?
Being polite. It's more than hatred.
Where did this come from?
There is something happening here that is really kind of freaky that I don't think I remember seeing before.
It's a wake-up call. I feel like America keeps, or some folks in America keep pressing the snooze button.
Yeah.
Because it's Gabby Giffords, it's Steve Scalise, it's Paul Pelosi. Look,
it's mob violence. It's mobs tearing down the cities of Los Angeles. It's mob violence tearing down Portland and attacking federal buildings in Seattle. It's also mob violence, not just the lone wolves, Anna.
Scalise, it's Paul Pelosi. Look, one of the things I'm most afraid of is that we become numb to this, the way that it feels we've become numb to school shootings, where, it's just like expected that happens in America. Oh, that's just, living in America. And we can't do that. But one of the things that I think we must demand is that our elected leaders who have the biggest bully pulpits, like we saw the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, but that also includes Donald Trump, and I'm going to say his name, because what we saw last week was a terrible escalation of political threats. We saw him talk about detaining and arresting Gavin Newsom for the crime of having been elected. We saw the Speaker of the House.
That's not violence. It's not violence. Arresting Gavin Newsom if he's trying to, stop the federal government from doing their job is the context of that. That's not violence.
We saw him talk about detaining and arresting Gavin Newsom for the crime of having been elected. We saw the Speaker of the House talk about tar and feathering Gavin Newsom for the crime of being elected. And we saw federal officials make
That's not
Alex
violence.
Padilla, a sitting U.S. senator, the senior senator.
Alex Padilla. And then they show the video of this guy trying to bum rush the director of Homeland Security like he's some edge rusher, like he's Micah Parsons coming off the end. And basically they get him out of there not knowing who he is or if he's a threat. And they want to use him as an example of political violence. It's not political violence. This guy's trying to bum rush the director of Homeland Security, and they got him out of there. That's not political violence, lady.
Make Alex Padilla, a sitting U.S. senator, the senior senator from California, kneel and then detain him and handcuff him because he wanted to ask questions. Let me just say, I know Alex Padilla. He is the child of immigrants.
Who cares?
His father was a short order cook.
Who cares?
His mother cleaned houses for a living.
Who cares that his father was an immigrant and his mother was a short cook? And what she's doing right here, this is called emotional manipulation. And they all do it. This is what the Democratic Party and the left wing in this country are good at. And this is what they do. They manipulate the emotions of these simpletons, of these useful idiots. And it's emotional manipulation. His father being an immigrant, his mother being a short order cook or whatever, that has nothing to do with him trying to bull rush coming off the edge like Micah Parsons, the director of Homeland Security. That has nothing to do with the way that Padilla was acting in that room when they were giving the press conference. But she's playing on your emotions. That's why she has to add that that extra information in. Oh, his father was an immigrant. His mother was a short order cook. Who cares? That doesn't change the fact that he was acting like a fool in that room trying to rush the director of Homeland Security.
Immigrants. His father was a short order cook. His mother cleaned houses for a living. They came from Mexico in the 60s.
Who cares?
He put himself, Alex Padilla, through MIT.
Who cares?
He is the less performative elected official I know.
Well, he was doing performances. He was doing performances last week in that press conference with the director of Homeland Security. And we don't really need your emotional manipulation. But again, that's what they're good at. This was another question that Kristen Welker, before or after she interviewed Adam Schiff, she had Rand Paul on the show, and she asked this question of Rand Paul. Now, what Kristen Welker is doing here, she is employing emotional manipulation to her audience by playing this clip of Governor Newsom employing emotional manipulation. Take a listen.
First, let's talk about those ICE raids that have really dominated the week. We've seen them, anti-ICE raids, really across the country. You're the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, which means you have oversight over DHS. I want to play some sound for you from Governor Gavin Newsom. Take a listen to what he had to say about those ICE raids.
I was in Oxnard, California yesterday. I met with a 12-year-old boy. Tears pouring down his face. This
is emotional manipulation. What he's doing. I met with a 12-year-old boy with tears pouring. That is meant to pull on your heartstrings. That is meant to garner an emotional response from you, not a rational, not an intellectual response, but an emotional response is what Kristen Welker and Gavin Newsom are doing here. The fact that this 12-year-old little boy is crying for his parents, that doesn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything to Obama. It sure didn't mean anything to Obama that the kid's parents were crying. Obama in this interview we listened to it in the last podcast, where he's asked by the Telemundo reporter, I mean, do you have to deport the parents of DACA recipients? And Obama says, yeah, I got to deport them. It's the law. I got to deport them. I don't care if the kids are crying. But what Kristen Welker and Gavin Newsom are doing here, they want you to think about the kid crying so they can pull on your emotional heartstrings. So you're not thinking rational about this issue. It doesn't matter that the kid is crying. His parents are illegal.
About those ICE raids.
I was in Oxnard, California yesterday. I met with a 12-year-old boy. Tears pouring down his face. His mom and dad snatched by agents.
They're illegal.
In the fields for over 20 years. He doesn't know where they are. He has no family in the United States. He's here alone, a sixth grader.
Why didn't he go with them? It's funny, and because Obama deported everyone. He deported the parents of DACA recipients. He deported people that were here working. He deported everyone. And it's funny. I'm not going to play Rand Paul's answer, but he basically says that to her. He's like, it's the law. I'm thinking rational about this. I'm not getting emotionally wrapped up in what Gavin Newsom is talking about, trying to emotionally manipulate his audience, just like you're doing. It's the law. We in Congress, just like what Obama says here, Congress allocated money. I don't even have time to play what Obama says here again. Congress allocated money for me to enforce the law. So that's what they're doing here, is all of this emotional manipulation. And this is the result of emotional manipulation. This clip went viral of this elderly woman in her 70s. She probably sits around watching MSNBC, retired, watching MSNBC and the lying media all day, probably hours a day. And this is what you get with emotional manipulation. Take a listen.
I'm just so scared. I'm 74 years old. I worry about everything. And I'm
74 years old. I'm so scared and I worry about everything. If I was the reporter sitting there interviewing her, the very first question that I would have asked her is, what media do you consume and how much of it? What media do you consume? Because that's what's going on here. And that's what you get with this emotional manipulation, which fear is part of emotional manipulation. That's what you're getting on all the mainstream media, CNN, ABC News, MSNBC, which I'm sure she watches tons of. And she's frightened, she's scared, and she's crying because that is what the media has done. Not only to her, to all these people. This is the group think that is going on on the left. I don't have very much time, but I want to get into a little bit of this. This article came out. This is why there's so much more political violence on the left than there is on the right, is because the left, they don't have any control of their emotions. They operate on a base emotional impulse. And when their emotions are triggered, then they immediately react without any rational thought, react on those emotions. And this article came out last week or a week before last. And this is it any wonder that liberals are having a mental health crisis? And this is a report that came from Nate Silva. I don't have time to read the article, but I have a clip here from The Hill from Robbie Sava, and he breaks down this report from Nate Silva. I just want you to listen to it.
Well, how's your mental health, dear viewer? Now, if you happen to be a young conservative, it's probably pretty good. On the other hand, if you're a young liberal, you might be depressed. That might be affecting your worldview. In fact, consider this finding that was reported by pollster Nate Silver earlier this week and went viral on social media after I tweeted a screenshot of it. Not unique observation to me. I was just kind of being the messenger here. Here was the quote. Among voters who report poor mental health, liberals outnumber conservatives 45% to 19%. Among those who report excellent mental health, conservatives outnumber liberals 51 to 20.
It's not surprising.
So the young men that Democrats are having trouble with aren't necessarily the ones who've been captured by the conservative manosphere or who are looking for a helping hand. Rather, it's those who report relatively high mental health and see Democrats as being too neurotic and perhaps constraining their opportunity to compete and reap the rewards of their work.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's not surprising to anyone. It's not surprising to anyone that, and here's this sentence from this article, liberals are more than twice as likely to say they have poor mental health, while conservatives are more than twice as likely to say their mental health and well-being is excellent. That this is a mental health issue, and it's all surrounded by groupthink. This is another article that went viral this over the past couple of days, and this article comes from this study. This is the study. I don't have very much time, but it's a social psychology study, attitude networks as intergroup realities, using network modeling to research attitude, identity, relationships, and polarized political extents or contexts, polarized political context. And this is the post that went viral. And he asked, how did this happen? There is more diversity of thought on the political right than the political left. That there's more diversity of thought. This is the political right and this is the political left. And again, this went viral and there's some great memes associated with this. This is my favorite right here. Someone came out with the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, that the diversity of thought is on the right and the left is confined to the cave, looking at shadows that are cast on the cave. That not only are they highly emotional, and they have a very short fuse, no control of their emotions. They suffer from depression, and they say themselves that they're dealing with mental health issues. They're also confined to a very small point of view, a very narrow point of view. That the narrow point of view is on the left, not the right. The narrow point of view. And the guy who puts this post out that went viral, he asked, how did this happen? How did this become the case that that the right has a more diverse point of view and worldview, and the narrow point of view is on the left? And everybody knows this is true. people who are not on the left, people who are on the right, they see this. That's why there's tons of funny memes in this post. But this explains why the Obama coalition in the 2024 election became the Trump coalition. This explains this transition from the people who voted for Obama in 2008 and even 2012, how they became Trump supporters, and how you saw that transition that took place, or transformation that took place in the 2024 election. It explains it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'm going to get back into talking about how that transition from Obama voters in 2008, 2012 became Trump's voters in 2024, and what else is going on. They had these huge crowds, protesting the No Kings protest all weekend, and there were some big crowds, but still, the approval rating of the Democratic Party right now is below 30%. Kamala Harris lost 7 of 7 swing states, and you would think by looking at these big crowds that there's some resurgence of the left, but it's not. It's the groupthink. They're all out there in their little cults, and that's what's going on. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I'll see you on Friday.